Hey everyone, welcome back to another Tuesday of Reading with Raptors. I have a very chatty guest with me this morning, so we might be getting interrupted as we go along by some very interesting Merlin noises. This is one of the smaller species of falcons that we have here in North America, one of the smallest that you'll find here in the kind of upper Midwest region, so a Merlin Falcon. Kind of a little bit larger than an American kestrel, not nearly as large as a peregrine falcon. Kind of a nice kind of middle ground there. Here we go. So I was really excited to bring this bird on. I've been wanting to for a while, but I think today is a great day to do it. So right now you might notice he looks a little scruffy. And that is because, like a lot of our birds, he is molting pretty intensely right now. So he's losing his old feathers and growing in new ones. But this bird, this is his first year. He was hatched he was hatched last spring. So this spring, he is kind of spring and summer. He's losing his old feathers and growing in new ones. And those old feathers that he's losing are his juvenile or kind of teenager feathers. So when he first hatched and grew in his first set of feathers, they were all kind of brown and streaky. And then for this Merlin, he's actually from fairly far north. So this kind of region, our Merlins tend to, especially for the males, tend to be a very dark blue. So he's going to get some very like dark blue, almost like a navy blue color kind of across the back of his head and his back, with a little bit of a lighter blue on kind of his like lower back, top of his tail. So we have another adult male Merlin here at the Raptor Center who already has his adult colors. So I'm really excited to see this one as he grows into those new adult feathers to show that he has finished his first year, he's getting into his second year, he's ready to be an adult Merlin. So right now, looking a little scruffy, losing a lot of those feathers. I hope at some point I can see if I can get the back side of him, because right now his tail is mid-molt. So he's actually, the two central tail feathers are finishing coming in. So they're still in this kind of almost tube shape that he has to finish preening off with his beak. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see that. But I wanted to get a chance to see him now, and then maybe in a couple weeks or a month or two from now, we'll get to see him again with full kind of adult feathers. Probably won't replace every single one. Usually that kind of first year of adult feathers, they're a little bit patchy. Some juvenile feathers sticking around with that kind of streaky brown color. So really excited to see what that all looks like. I figured, fittingly, we could read another excellent book actually brought in by one of our volunteers called Feathers, Not Just for Flying. This one's by Melissa Stewart with illustrations by Sarah S. Brannen. And as we go along, I'll pause if we're having a little bit too much noise. I will say for Merlins, if anybody here is lucky enough to have a Merlin nesting site near them, which we're starting to see more and more of here in the kind of urban city area, especially here in the Twin Cities, you will know that Merlins tend to be fairly vocal species of raptors. So pretty typical to hear this kind of noise from them. So probably hear some noise as we go along. I do also have a nice little piece of chicken. I'm not gonna lie, it's a kind of gooey piece of chicken. So I'll probably give that to him here in a minute. We'll maybe get started reading a little bit, and then I'll give him that nice gooey piece of chicken to work on. So you can get to see him using his feet and his talons, using his beak as we read about feathers with our Merlin. So let's begin. While he's doing that, I'll show you the inside of this book. It's got beautiful like field guide style drawings of different feathers, which I love. So here's the opening page, Feathers, Not Just for Flying. And here are two birds from the kind of American South called anhingas diving down to catch some fish. So very similar to cormorants that we have here further up north. So Birds and feathers go together, like trees and leaves, like stars in the sky. All birds have feathers, but no other animals do. Most birds have thousands of feathers, but those feathers aren't all the same. That's because feathers have so many different jobs to do. So we'll start over here we have a peacock feather, a big long white swan feather, a red-tailed hawk feather, a blue jay feather, an American bittern feather, an anhinga, cardinal, a wood duck, a rosy-faced lovebird, and down here, a little dark-eyed junco. Feathers can warm like a blanket. Here's some pictures of blue jay feathers. I'll zoom in a second. On cold, damp days, a blue jay stays warm by fluffing up its feathers and trapping a layer of warm air next to its skin. So here is, it's drawn to look like a photograph. So it's a blue jay, and it has a caption that says, "Blue Jay, Bradbury Mountain, Maine." So the blue jay sitting on top of a nice kind of, looks like a pine tree or conifer. And then over here, we have, there we go, some pictures of different blue jay feathers and a little piece of a knit shawl or scarf or something to kind of compare. Those fluffy feathers are just like having a little scarf that you can wear all the time. Feathers can also cushion like a pillow. Here it says, a female wood duck lines her nest with feathers she plucks from her own body. These feathers cushion the duck's eggs and keep them warm. So here is a wood duck. This one says wood duck, Lake Bemidji, Minnesota. So there's a wood duck sitting inside of a hole in a tree. And then here we have a picture of some eggs sitting in that fluffy, warm feathers. Here's what an egg looks like. And here's a little wood duck feather. I like that we're timing it very well. So we're waiting until I turn the pages to start making noise. Feathers can shade out sun like an umbrella. So here we have a tri-colored heron from the Florida Everglades. What is it doing with its wings out like that? As a hungry tri-colored heron wades through the water in search of food, it raises its wings high over its head. The feathers block out reflections from the sky and shade the water. This makes it easier to spot tasty fish and frogs. So here's a picture of some of those tri-colored heron feathers, including some nice kind of smooth feathers, nice fluffy feather, and then here, some little umbrellas. That's what those feathers are doing. It's that shady hunting style. Here, let's see if I can give you, I've got this nice piece of ooey gooey chicken. Do you want to work on that? So you can work on that a little bit. Feathers can also protect skin like sunscreen. On sunny summer afternoons, red-tailed hawks spend hours soaring through the sky in search of prey. Their thick feathers protect their delicate skin from the sun's harmful rays. So here we have some red-tailed hawks soaring through the air over Shiprock, New Mexico. And here's a red-tailed hawk feather. And then here's a little tag that says sunblock, SPF 30 sun protection. So here's the sunblock that we should be wearing because we don't have feathers. And then here are the feathers that block red-tailed hawk's skin from the sun. So big open desert. Feathers can soak up water like a sponge or clean up messes like a scrub brush. So let's see what it says. On sizzling summer days, a male sand grouse cools off by soaking his belly feathers in a watering hole. Then the proud papa flies to his nest. While dad guards his chicks, the little ones suck on his feathers to quench their thirst. So here is, there you go. So here is a sand grouse and a couple of other adult sand grouse in a watering hole, him soaking up that water in his feathers. And then here are the babies getting the water from those wet tummy feathers. And this is Pallas's sand grouse from the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. So you can see why it might be hard for them to find good places with water, why they might need to be able to have these nice spongy feathers to soak up the water and be able to bring it to their nests. That's the Pallas's sand grouse. And then for the scrub brush, an American bittern always cleans up after it eats. Its feathers have brittle tips that crumble into a dusty powder. The powder is perfect for scouring away the dirt and slimy fish oil that sticks to its feathers. So here's a picture of an American bittern using its beak to preen its feathers. You can see one of these feathers up close. So the kind of brittle tips would be up here that would kind of crumble away. And here is a little scrubby brush. So this one says American bittern. I don't actually know how to say that. Tualatin? I am probably saying that wrong. Tualatin River in Oregon. Apologies if I have ruined that name. Tualatin? Trying to keep him in the thing. There we go. Feathers can distract attackers like a bullfighter's cape, or hide a bird from predators like camouflage clothing. So over here it says a dark-eyed junco in Lincoln, Massachusetts. A dark-eyed junco distracts its enemies by flashing the bright white feathers on the outside of its tail. Then it quickly covers the feathers and darts off in the other direction. So you can see the outside tail feather here is all white, and then here's one with a white stripe. So it has a cat sneaking up on a bird feeder. So it has these bright white feathers on the outside of its tail, and then if it flashes those, the cat will think it's going in one direction, and then it will dart away in the other direction, sneak away. Here's a picture of a bullfighter with a cape, kind of distract where the bull is. And for hiding and camouflage, it says, a female cardinal's dull, grayish tan body and feathers blend in with her forest home. They help her hide and protect her nest from enemies while she sits on her eggs. So here in this picture, you have a very nice, sneaky, hidden female cardinal sitting on the nest. You can see how she blends in with her surroundings. So instead of having the bright red feathers, she has these kind of duller brownish red. And then down here are pictures of two people in kind of that camouflage uniform you might see in the army, for example, or maybe people out hunting. So the camouflage to blend in with the trees and leaves too. In the background, you can see one of my favorite little Merlin behaviors. Some other small falcons will do it too. After they finished eating, where they'll kind of move their feet around in this very specific way. Just kind of stomping his feet around. We help them clean them off, make sure he got everything. Just think it's very good. You might also see him cleaning off his beak a little bit too. So feathers can make high-pitched sounds like a whistle. So here is something called a club-winged mannequin from the Milby Bird Sanctuary in Ecuador in South America, called a club-winged mannequin. So it says, when a male club-winged mannequin wants to get a female's attention, he leans forward, raises his wings over his back, and rapidly shakes them. As feathers with ridges rub against feathers with stiff, curved tips, a squeaky chirping sound trills through the air. So here's close-up of those feathers. So there's a curved feather and a kind of stiff feather that will rub against each other to make this sound. Here's somebody playing a whistle too, so you can see the musical notes behind them, and here's how we play a whistle. But these club-winged mannequins have a way of making a separate whistle with their feathers. So that is club-winged mannequin. Feathers can also attract attention, like fancy jewelry. Here we have a peacock in the Pusa Hill Forest in New Delhi, India. A peacock's bright, beautiful tail feathers make him easy to spot. At mating time, a female is attracted to the male with the biggest, most colorful fan of feathers. So here's one close up so you can see the detail of how they get those amazing eye spots. The actual feathers are actually reflective, so they're really shiny. But here's what it looks like all together, that really impressive fan train that the males can use to attract attention. Be very flashy. Feathers can dig holes like a backhoe or carry building supplies like a forklift. So for this one it says, after bank swallows mate, they make a home together. First, the male uses his bill and the tough feathers on his lower legs to dig a 2-foot-long tunnel in a stream bank. He pushes the dirt out with his wings. Then the female builds a nest of straw, grasses, and leaves at the end of the tunnel. So here's a close... I thought this was a real fly for a second. There's been a couple of flies moving around. So here is a little fly. And here is a picture of the inside of that tunnel that the bank swallows cleared out. Here's a whole group of bank swallows. And then here are what those stiff feathers look like that they can use to move the dirt around. And here's what a backhoe looks like. So we have to build these big machines to move around all of our dirt, whereas birds just have these little feathers. And for carrying the building supplies, it says this is a rosy-faced lovebird from the Guab River in Namibia, Africa. You can see it's this very kind of peachy color and then green bird, but here sticking out of its back are some pieces of, it looks like wood or the bark that it's peeling off of the stick. So here are some of those beautiful feathers that it has. Most birds carry nesting material in their beaks, but not the female rosy-faced lovebird. When she finds grass, leaves, or strips of bark, she tucks them under her rump feathers and flies back to her nest. So she can tuck those pieces of nesting material up underneath the fluffy feathers on her lower back, and that way she can help carry them back to her nest. So here's a forklift that we might need to move our building materials around, and here's her built-in forklift right there on the back of her feathers. Good rouse from our Merlin in the background. Feathers can help birds float like a life jacket. So here are 2 or 3 mute swans in the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, floating on the water. Mute swans glide smoothly across the water surface. Pockets of air trapped between their feathers help these graceful birds stay afloat. So here's what we need to go sailing around on the Chesapeake Bay. We need something like a kayak and, of course, our life preservers or our life jackets. And here we have swans with their built-in life jackets, those fluffy feathers with the air trapped between the layers. Helps keep them warm, too. You can see sitting out on water can be kind of chilly sometimes. Feathers can also help birds plunge downward like a fishing sinker. So these are a pair of anhingas in Lake Martin, Louisiana. Most birds make a special oil to waterproof their feathers, but not the anhinga. The weight of its wet feathers helps the hungry hunter dive deep down in search of fish, crayfish, and shrimp. So they have these really kind of stiff, long feathers. Here's a little shrimp. And then here are some fishing sinkers, like we might use if we're going fishing to kind of make sure that everything sinks down below the surface. So these birds, they're not very well waterproofed. So they can sink right down with their waterlogged feathers to get down to catch fish and other small little critters. And then they have to spend a lot of time drying off afterwards. So you'll see them sitting out in the sun with their wings sticking out if you go down to the kind of southern Gulf area of North America. Feathers can glide like a sled or sprint across the snow like snowshoes. Emperor penguins have tightly packed belly feathers that form firm, slick surfaces. The feathers make it easy for these birds to slide across ice and snow. So here is the emperor penguin in Adeliland, Antarctica, sliding around on its tummy with these nice kind of feathers for its tummy. And then here are two people on a sled sliding down a hill. So that's what we have to use for a sled. And this is what emperor penguins have. For sprinting across the snow, these are willow ptarmigans in Denali National Park, Alaska. You can see big fluffy white birds with these big fluffy feet. Each autumn, willow ptarmigans grow a thick layer of feathers on top of their toes. Like snowshoes, the feathers increase the size of the bird's feet so they can shuffle across the snow instead of sinking in. So you can see these big fluffy feet with these big footprints. And then here are footprints that a person would make if they were wearing snowshoes. So we have to kind of add on our snowshoes, but they have theirs built in, these fluffy white feathers. But most of all, feathers can give birds the lift they need to race across the sky. So here's someone running around on the beach, and above them, a whole flock of gulls. Being able to fly around next to that big open, it looks like it's probably the ocean or a great lake or something. So give them the lift they need to fly. Probably their most famous job. Here's one last note about kinds of feathers. Many scientists study birds, and they are learning new information every day. Right now, not all scientists agree about the best way to classify types of feathers. Here is one system that many scientists use. So we'll start over here on the side, so we'll block him for a minute. Tiny Plume feathers are attached to nerves. They help a bird sense its surroundings, and they let the bird know that its feathers are in place. So these are long, narrow feathers with just a little bit of bristles on the end to help sense where those other feathers are. Stiff bristle feathers around a bird's eyes act like eyelashes. Some birds use bristle feathers around their mouths to locate food. So we see these a lot in our owls, who have a lot of bristle feathers next to their faces. So they're fluffy on the bottom, but really narrow on the top. Soft, fluffy down feathers keep a bird warm by trapping body heat next to its skin. So this is kind of like if you have a down jacket, you have these fluffy feathers inside. We kind of mimic this by stuffing our jackets with other things like wool or cotton, so we can kind of add the fluffy texture in there. Semi-plume feathers work with down feathers to keep birds warm and dry. So these are a little bit bigger. They actually have a little bit of structure to them, whereas these are just little puffs of fluff. Contour feathers cover most of a bird's body. They give a bird its shape and colors. So you can see these ones have a little bit more shape to them. This one has a little bit of a pattern up here up close. And then the flight feathers on a bird's wings lift it up and move it forward. Flight feathers on the tail help a bird steer and keep balance. So here we have a nice curved flight feather. So you can see the kind of patterns that you'd see. So this would be the front edge of the feather, and this would be the back edge as the bird is flying forward. And then here is a tail feather. So it's a little bit more symmetrical and has this kind of point on the end. This is from something, a woodpecker. This is actually probably from a flicker. But it's a long tail feather for helping them steer while they fly. And then we just have that beautiful back cover again with all those feathers that we saw. So you can see right now the Merlin has fluffed up a lot of his feathers for staying warm a little bit, mostly just being very comfortable. You might also see him kind of adjusting his crop a little bit since he just ate a nice amount of food. He has to get it from his crop up here, his little storage tank, down into his stomach, and there are no muscles to do that, so he has to kind of move it himself. So you might see him adjusting a little bit. I saw a question earlier. I didn't want to stop and interrupt, but I want to make sure I answer it because it's one of my favorite things to talk about, which is, do you know of any good feather guides for feathers we find? So the first thing I have to say is that if you find feathers, most of the feathers that you find belong to birds who are protected by law, so you can't keep any of the feathers. But if you find feathers, definitely take pictures, get a good look at them, and then that way you can take those pictures home and figure out what bird those feathers are from, and then you can just leave the feathers outside where you find them. But my favorite thing, and I'll drop a link to this in the comments for this video too, is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Feather Atlas. It's for all birds here in North America. It's amazing. It has scans that they've taken of feathers from both the wings and the tails of every species of bird that we have here in North America, and there are a couple of ways you can use it. If you have a pretty good idea of what the bird is, and you just want to know where the feather is from on their body, you can look up the individual bird and see all the different scans that they have. Or if you have no idea, you just found this super cool feather on the ground, you can search it by kind of the size of the feather, the color, maybe the pattern, and it can give you all the picture options. So I use it a lot if I am kind of out, I have a woods nearby my house, and so sometimes I find some feathers and I'm like, oh, I think I know maybe what kind of bird this is from, but I don't know for sure, or maybe I don't recognize this one. Go onto the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Feather Atlas. It has a lot of really cool information about feathers on there too, so I will put a link in the comments, but otherwise it's a pretty easy search for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Feather Atlas is what it's called. So it's a great project, a really good resource if you have a lot of feathers near you, or really just want to learn more, or if you just want something to do and you want to look at a lot of really cool feathers. It's great. It's got a lot of cool pictures. So check that out. It's one of my favorite resources, and I don't get to talk about it nearly enough. So a couple of questions about this particular Merlin. So like I said in the description for this video, this Merlin doesn't actually have a name that we call him yet. We just refer to him as the Merlin or the new Merlin. So he actually joined us here in our education program kind of earlier this spring. So he had just started to be in formal training over kind of the end of the winter. So now we are trying to work on getting him really used to being in a crate, and hopefully getting to a point where he can start traveling a little bit more. So being in something like a video like this is actually really good practice for him, especially now that we are doing so many programs online. Being able to do this kind of thing is a new really important training activity for him. So thank you all for letting me blatantly use this as a training opportunity for this new bird. He lives with us because he actually was in some sort of collision. We don't know exactly what happened, but he ran into something and it injured some of the nerves in one of his wings. So that means that the signals that his brain is sending to his wing, they're not quite getting there. The actual, kind of like the electrical wiring that connects our brains to the rest of our bodies, there's one part that's not working the way it's supposed to in one of his wings, which means that he's not able to fly as well as he would need to live out in the wild. He can still fly fairly well, so he's in a spot at the Raptor Center where he's able to get a little bit of flight in, and we're working on getting him a kind of larger spot so he can get a lot of good flight in to kind of keep up the strength in that wing. But he's not able to fly well enough to do the really fast chasing down of birds that Merlins really need to be able to do. So they typically are bird hunters. They'll also catch things like mice and other small animals. But as falcons, they're really good at catching birds. And so you really need to have excellent flight skills to be a Merlin out in the wild. And so since he can't fly quite well enough, he has a new job, which will hopefully be teaching a lot of people while he's here with us at the Raptor Center. So again, really excited to see him as he's changing out those little first year Merlin feathers and growing into his adult feathers. So yeah, pretty exciting to see that. So right now he has that, again, the kind of streaky brown colors. Ooh, what habitats do merlins live in? So normally you'll see merlins in more kind of forested areas. So unlike our other falcons that we have native to here in most of the US, especially here in the kind of upper Midwest, we really have three main types of falcons. We have the peregrine falcon, who we think of as living on top of cliffs or our skyscrapers here in the cities, hunting other birds. And then we also think of our American kestrels, who are living in big open prairie areas looking for dragonflies and grasshoppers and small mice. And then the merlin is kind of the odd one, who's living in more densely forested areas with lots of trees, and they're chasing after other birds. So they're not kind of swooping down from above, they're chasing after them. So normally, typically we've only seen them kind of in the kind of central and northern parts of Minnesota. But again, as we kind of increase the amount of kind of people around and as we are building out and creating more suburbs, we're actually seeing them adapt more to living closer to people. So we're starting to see more nesting spots of them even here in the Twin Cities, which has been really interesting to see. It means that we're seeing more young merlins here at the Raptor Center as well, where previously we wouldn't see as many. But now we're seeing them nesting closer to people. I actually have a merlin's nest in my neighborhood, which has been really cool. So I know that they're living here even in kind of the northern suburbs of the Twin Cities. So lots of them around, and more as time goes on, which is really interesting to see them adapt to kind of living closer to people. So especially here in Minnesota, where we have such good parkland, even in our more urbanized areas, we tend to have a lot of good tree areas for them to nest in. So you might see that habitat changing a little bit as time goes on. And then maybe one more question about how long do they live? So merlin's out in the wild. Again, for a fairly small raptor, he weighs a little bit less than half a pound, a little closer to a quarter pound, actually, about this morning, 135 grams, if I'm not mistaken. So it weighs a little bit over a quarter of a pound. For those small raptors, a normal lifespan is about 8 to 12 years, somewhere in there. About a decade is a pretty good lifespan for a merlin. At places like the Raptor Center, they can live about twice as long. So they can get really good food, really good housing, don't have to worry about migrating, also don't need to worry about predators either. Because even though this is an excellent predator of those other small birds and mice and things like that, they are also very well snack-sized for larger raptors like owls or Cooper's hawks, as well as if they're on the ground, they might also be prey for cats, coyotes, foxes, things like that. So a little bit safer when they are here being teachers, so they can live about twice as long. So yeah, really good questions. We'll keep you posted on any sort of naming process for this merlin. I know at some point he'll probably need something to call him, other than just the merlin. But for now, he's the merlin, which works just fine. He doesn't know his name either way. It's more just for us to be able to refer to him. So we'll keep you guys posted. I think that's all the questions that were still outstanding, but definitely check out, oh yeah, somebody was mentioning that sometimes we do get gyrfalcons. We'll see them sometimes passing through, especially along the Great Lakes region, but typically gyrfalcons, you'll see them in the very northern part of North America, of the US, and then up into Canada, because they're mostly nesting in the very northern parts of Canada, and kind of all around the Arctic Circle for gyrfalcons. So we do sometimes see them. But not super common. I would be surprised if too many people are seeing them, but that's awesome that somebody gets to see them in Wisconsin, because they're gorgeous. They're huge falcons. So I think that will wrap us up for today. Again, keep an eye out for more info on both our Facebook page and our website for more of our online programs. Hopefully you all got to see the really cool video about our Zoomies programs last week. If you haven't, check it out. It's one of my favorite videos that we've made lately. Check it out and see if that's something that you're interested in. Again, check out our website at theraptorcenter.org for more information about the online programs that we're doing here for the rest of the summer and into the fall. So everyone have a great rest of your day. It's supposed to be gorgeous if you're here in Minnesota at least. So head outside, go check out some birds, find some cool feathers to look up on the Feather Atlas. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. We'll see you all next week.